Alright, we're back. We're going to finish up. It shouldn't take us too much longer to finish out. Alright, so on my next problem, my function is 2 over the square root of 3 minus x. So you take a look at it. Technically, it's going to fall under the first case because I have an x in the denominator. And then it also falls in case number 2 because I have a radical with an even index. So we're going to actually have to look at both in this case. So if I apply the first case, it would just simply say, okay, set 3 minus x equal to 0. So if I get x by itself, I'm going to get x cannot equal 3. Well, case number 2 says, okay, I'm going to take that radicand and I'm going to set it greater than or equal to 0. Now if I solve that, if I subtract 3 and then divide by -1, I'll have to flip the sign. I'm going to get x is less than or equal to 3. Now see how we have a contradiction here. We're saying x cannot equal 3, and then over here I have it can equal 3. So to fix that, all you're going to do is take that equals 2 sign away. So if I take that equal to sign away, I'm simply getting the statement x has to be less than 3. So if I write that domain in interval notation, if it's less than, that means it's going to go to -infinity to +3. Now I took the equal to sign away, so that means it's going to have a parentheses because it cannot include that +3. So your answer simply would be -infinity to +3. Alright, let's take a look at a couple more. Now my fifth one, number 5, notice, again, this is going to fall under both cases. I have an x in the denominator, so I'm going to take my denominator, set it equal to 0, so I'm going to get x cannot equal 7. Then I also have a radical with an even index, so I'm going to take my radicand and set it greater than or equal to 0. So in this case, I set it greater than or equal to 0. I'm going to get x has to be greater than or equal to 2. Now if I take a look at this, I'm saying x has to be greater than or equal to 2, but it cannot equal 7. Well, 7's in this interval. So it may be helpful to draw this out. So it says I'm starting at +2. 7 is somewhere. Alright, so it says it can equal 2. So I have a closed circle. But when I get to 7, I'm going to have an open, and then I'm going to continue on. So notice we just broke my answer into 2 parts. My first part is going to be 2 to 7. The 2 is going to have a bracket because it can equal that, but it cannot equal 7, so that means I'm going to use a parentheses. Union 7 is continuing to the right, so it's going to +infinity. So therefore my domain would be 2 to 7, union 7 to infinity. Alright, let's take a look at one more. So notice I don't have an x in the denominator, so it's not going to be case 1. Now I have a radical, but notice my index is a 7. So if my index is a 7, it's odd. So it's not falling under case number 2. It is actually going to fall under case number 3. So what does case number 3 say? Case number 3 says you don't have to do anything. Your domain is simply all real numbers, which is the same thing as saying -infinity to +infinity. So, notice, every single problem is going to fit into one of these 3 cases. Some are going to require more work than others. Now, the last thing that we're going to talk about today is simply evaluating functions. So evaluating functions should be pretty easy to do. Don't worry about that sentence. I'm going to just go straight into a problem. Alright, so let's take a look. It says f of negative 6. So it gives us a function f. So remember, all it's saying to do is simply go up to f. Every time I see an x, I'm going to replace it with the negative 6. So I'm going to have negative 6 squared. And it's very important to include parentheses around that substitution. Minus 5 times negative 6 plus 1. Well, if I go ahead, I don't have a calculator. You can use your calculator if you want, but I'm going to go ahead and work it out by hand. You're going to have, what, 36 plus 30 plus 1. So we're going to get what? 66 plus 1 is going to give us 67. So we're saying f of negative 6 is going to be 67. Now part B is saying the same thing. It's still saying I'm plugging into that given function, but this time wherever I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a 3. So I'll replace it with the 3, so I get 3 squared minus 5 times 3 plus 1. So if I go ahead, let me zoom in here. So 3 squared is 9 minus 15 plus 1. So what are we going to get? 9 minus 15 is negative 6. Negative 6 plus 1 is going to give me negative 5. So f of 3 would be negative 5. Pretty straightforward, I hope. Now the last type of function, and I don't know how many of you remember this, is what we call a piecewise function. So notice it gives us actually 3 functions. So the first function is 3x plus 2. It's saying to use that when x is less than negative 3. The middle function is 5, and it's saying to use that when x is between negative 3 and 0. And our last function is x squared plus 5x, and it's saying use that function when x is greater than or equal to 0. So, we're going to look at our x. So notice for part A, my x value is a positive 9. So which one of these 3 is it going to fall under? Well, it's going to fall under the pink function. So that means I'm going to go up. Every time I see an x, I'm going to replace it with a 9. So x squared, so 9 squared plus 5 times 9. So what are we going to get? 81 plus 45. So what? 81 plus 45, that's going to give us f of 9 is going to equal 126. Alright, so let's look at B. So where is negative 5? Where's negative 5 going to fall? See how it's going to fall under the yellow. Negative 5 is less than negative 3. So I'm going to plug into my first function, which says 3 times negative 5 plus 2. So what are we going to get? Negative 15 plus 2, that's going to give me negative 13. So we're saying f of negative 5 is going to equal negative 13. Now the last one says f of negative 3. So where's negative 3 going to fall? If I come over here, see how it says it can equal negative 3 in this middle function. So that means I'm going to plug into the middle function, but is there anywhere to plug in? Is there an x? No. This is what we call a constant function. So that means my answer is always going to be 5. So f of negative 3, there's no place to substitute, so that is my answer. F of negative 3 equals 5. I know that was a quick rundown, but if you have any questions, please make sure you reach out to me either through a My Father Ryan message or an email. I hope you have a great weekend, and hopefully I will see you on Monday.